Here are a few of the strangest situations lottery winners find themselves in. Number 14, Larry Dawson versus the MultiState Lottery Association. Larry Dawson won $9 million back in 2011, and most people would take the money and move on. But Dawson had a piece of information that affected him. He knew his win would have been nearly 3 times bigger if there hadn't been cheating involved with lottery officials. Dawson won a hot lotto jackpot in 2011 and took the $6 million lump sum before taxes. Years later, he learned that the game's previous $16.5 million jackpot had been rigged by Eddie Tipton, the Lottery Association's information security director. Yep, fraud can be in anything involving a lot of money. So Dawson sued in 2016, saying that the $16.5 million should have carried over to be added to the prize he won under Hot Lotto's rules. His lawsuit said that he should have been due an additional $10 million. That's the size of the lump sum plus interest. So how did Tipton do it? He secretly installed code in software used by lotteries that allowed him to predict winning number combinations on certain days of the year. For years, he worked with his brother and other people he brought in on the scam to purchase winning tickets and claim prizes around the country. Tipton's downfall began after he bought a winning ticket for the $16.5 million Hot Lotto jackpot in December of 2010. Stunned coworkers identified him as the buyer after investigators released surveillance footage of the purchase years later. Even though Tipton had bought it, he wasn't dumb enough to try to claim it. He passed the ticket to someone else to claim, but the Iowa Lottery refused to pay out after lawyers for a trust declined to reveal who bought the ticket. Tipton ended up getting sentenced to 25 years in prison. As for Dawson, he didn't get the full $10 million, but he did settle for an additional $1.5. Number 13, Christina Shaw versus all her coworkers. Christina Shaw bought a lucky lottery ticket and won the Mega Money Bonanza worth $9.5 million back in 2013. The only problem is her coworkers said that it was theirs too. But how? Yep, that's right. They were all in a lottery pool together. Shaw had bought extra tickets for herself along with the tickets for the office pool. But how would they be able to determine which tickets were for the office pool and which were her own? Her coworkers claimed that each of them routinely pooled money to buy lottery tickets, and they took turns buying tickets. Shaw happened to buy the group's tickets that week. This is why the group had made the rule that anyone buying tickets for the pool could not buy tickets at the same location at the same time. Problem was that the rule was unwritten. One easy way to get out of this jam is just to always take a picture of the tickets that's for the group and send it to everyone before the drawing. That way, there's no confusion. Of course, Shaw said that the ticket was her personal ticket and she didn't know about the unwritten rule. She said that the numbers she picked were based on the birthdays and ages of her children and grandchildren, while the group's numbers were always computer picked. But she still settled with the group anyways for an undisclosed amount. The lesson here is to make sure to have zero loopholes and have things absolutely clear when it comes to pooled lottery tickets. Number 12, Tony Cuatack versus Eric Cervantes. Tony Cuatack played the lottery as an undocumented immigrant and won $750,000 before taxes. You can see the dilemma on his hands, right? So what does a desperate man do in a situation like this? Cuatack knew he would get deported back to Guatemala if the lottery administrators knew of his undocumented status. So he called up his friend and boss, Eric Cervantes, to help cash the prize for him. As a supposedly good friend, his boss went in to claim the winnings on Cuatack's behalf. But when he cashed it, he decided to keep the money. Things escalated when his friend even started saying that Cuatack had decided to give him the money. Fortunately, surveillance footage showed that it was in fact Cuatack who had purchased the ticket. The video also showed him hugging and kissing his girlfriend. He also had proof that he sent photos of the winning ticket to his friends from his phone. He eventually won his case, but not after his boss had already spent roughly $223,000. And even worse, a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement hold was placed against Cuatack after the case. Number 11, Barb Reddick versus Tyrone McManus. Barb Reddick and her nephew, Tyrone McManus, both decided to play a game called Chase the Ace, a lottery similar to a 50-50 draw. Instead of half the winnings going to the winner, the winner only gets 20% of the lottery pool. However, they get a chance to pull an ace of spades from a deck of cards. That's because if the winner is lucky enough to pull the ace, they also win a jackpot made up of the remaining 30% of the ticket sales from all the previous lotteries. And this is exactly what Barb ended up doing, winning the draw and pulling the ace of spades. But the problem for her was she also had her nephew sign her ticket. Why? Because it was for good luck. She claimed that she had planned to share some of the prize, but never half of it. The funniest thing was, all of this happened while they were publicly receiving the lottery check. Right after they both received the check, she said she was taking her nephew to court. She even went on a rant about how he didn't deserve the money and how she used to consider him like a son. They eventually settled and made up, with her nephew ending up with a little more than double the 150 grand she had supposedly promised earlier. Number 10. Lynn Poirier versus Howard Browning. Imagine breaking up with your significant other, and years later, you win the lottery, but your ex hunts you down to look for his or her share. This is what happened to Lynn Poirier. She and her ex-boyfriend Howard Browning had lived together for 2 years. During their time together, she told him that if she won the lottery, they would split the prize. Little did she know she would have to hold that promise a long time later. Spoiler alert, Poirier actually did win the lottery for $1 million. This is when she realized everything might get messy. 8 years after their breakup, Browning decided to pursue legal action and sued her for half the prize money. Not only did he file the suit, he actually won. According to Florida law, a verbal agreement like this example is completely valid, provided that it was made when they were still a couple. Unfortunately for Poirier, she had to file for bankruptcy after losing in court. She had already invested her winnings buying some buildings and businesses that didn't end up going well for her. Maybe not telling anyone she won a lottery might have helped. Number 9. Gloria McKenzie versus Scott McKenzie. Gloria McKenzie was 84 when she won a huge Powerball jackpot worth $590 million. So what did she do afterwards? She sued her son. Why? Gloria took the lump sum of roughly $371 million after taxes back in 2013, but she had to split the earnings with her son Scott. This may have already been one point of contention. The reason he got half was because he was the person who had helped her buy the winning ticket. Her son getting the money isn't why she sued, though. It's because of what she wanted for an ROI on her money. She gave her son Scott control of her money, so Scott then turned to Harry Madden, a financial advisor who's a money manager in Florida and also a co-host of a radio show called Smart Money. Madden generated a return of less than 1% on her money in 3.5 years. And he charged her more than $2 million in fees. Madden claimed that she wanted super conservative investments and that's why her returns were so low. But come on, 1% in return? What was he putting the money in? Number 8. Zhao Dupont versus Susannah Gaspar. Zhao Dupont was actually horrified when he realized the $4,000 scratch-off ticket he thought he had won was actually a $4 million win. Why? It's because he realized he was cheated out of a lot of money. Dupont was at a cafe when one of his friends told him that someone had won $4 million from a winning $10 Gold Rush scratch-off ticket. Dupont's first reaction was surprise. Someone else had won right after he hit his $4,000 winner, and it was won on the same type of scratch-off ticket. What's even weirder was that they both had bought their tickets from the same place. He showed his friend a photo of his winning ticket on his phone. His friend looked at the photo and told him that the prize was actually $4 million and not the $4,000 he had thought he won. And that was the moment when Dupont knew he was scammed. The reason Dupont thought he only won $4,000 was that Dupont can't speak or read English. That's because of the word mil on the winning lottery ticket. That translates to 1,000 in Dupont's native language of Portuguese. Dupont claims he asked Maria Oliveira to cash the ticket for him. He knew she had done the same for other people in the past in return for a small percentage of the winnings. According to Dupont's lawsuit, Oliveira took the ticket to her boss Susannah Gaspar and they worked out a scheme to scam Dupont. Oliveira gave Dupont $3,800 in cash and he gave her $200 for her help. As soon as he found out he was duped, he sued. Currently, the lump sum that's just over $1.6 million sits in an interest-bearing account while the case is still being sorted out. Number 7. Sharon Jones versus everyone. A losing lottery ticket that became a winner? That's kind of the story. Sharon Jones won the lottery with a ticket that was supposedly thrown away after someone else had declared it a losing ticket. In 2011, Sharon Jones checked losing tickets she found at a convenience store just to make sure they actually were losers. That's when she found a winning $1 million ticket. But the store's manager, Lisa Petrich, sued Sharon the next month. Lisa argued that she was the rightful owner because the ticket had come out of a receptacle in the store for losing tickets. It was labeled "Do Not Take." Lisa said that any of the tickets put in there belonged to her under an agreement with the store's owners. Deciding who was entitled to this $1 million ticket took about 15 months to resolve. Sharon wasn't allowed to spend the money by court order until a judgment could be reached. The first trial ended after Judge Thomas Hughes said neither Sharon or Lisa might have a claim on the ticket. That's because this story gets even better. During the trial, a third woman came forward. Sharon Duncan was the actual buyer of the winning ticket. She said she had thrown the ticket away after she thought that she didn't win anything. At a second trial, the judge ruled that the original buyer, Sharon Duncan, was entitled to the winnings. But 3 weeks later, the judge canceled his verdict without explanation. He ordered a new trial and removed himself as the judge. The case was assigned to another judge. Before the third trial could begin, the store's owner, Louis Dejani, put his claim in on the sum of the winnings. Somehow, they eventually all agreed to a confidential settlement in November 2012. Number 6. Eva Reyes versus Laxmi Bardwage. Eva Reyes is a lottery player from Northern California. She had promised the owner of the liquor store where she bought her lottery ticket, Laxmi Bardwage, that she would split her prize with him if she won. Just why would she make this promise? Sometimes these promises are made just because it's one of those things you say as a joke, but he obviously didn't think this situation was this way. And it totally makes sense why he didn't. It's because the liquor store owner actually lent her the money to buy the tickets. When she won the $1 million prize with the ticket she bought with his money, Laxmi went on to sue her when she wouldn't pay up. Reyes stated that she did promise him part of her winnings as a thank you for his help. The story gets even weirder. There actually was a note written. According to her attorney, the note clearly states that she would give him only $50,000. However, the note supposedly has an extra zero that was squeezed in. We're gonna guess the store owner kept that note. We still couldn't find any credible sources on who won the dispute. Do you know what happened? Number 5. Donna Campbell versus Arnim Ramdas. Picture this. You're married to your wife or husband. Everything seems to be fine. Then you find out he or she hid $600,000 from you. What would you do? It turns out this was exactly what happened to Donna Campbell of Florida. She found out her husband was hiding his lottery win from a lottery pool he had with his coworkers. The worst part? Or the funniest part, was the length he went to keep the secret. He went as far as to never having the TV on and disconnecting their phone. Her suspicions went up further when she got a postcard about a new home purchase addressed to her husband. She eventually did a simple Google search and found out the news of her husband's lottery win. When she finally confronted him, his first reaction was to deny everything. But he then confessed, but came up with the excuse that he had actually bought the ticket for his daughter from another marriage. And then, poof, he just disappeared. And that's when she decided to sue for her half. However, a judge somehow rejected her demand for half the money. Number 4. Jane Doe versus New Hampshire. Keeping anonymous is the key for no headaches after winning a lottery. This is exactly what went through the mind of one lady who won in New Hampshire. After winning the Powerball prize of $559 million, she decided to fight in court to make her identity remain private. Something that took a long legal battle. The problem was that she did something that would have legally prevented her from keeping it private. In New Hampshire, if you sign the back of your lottery ticket, you legally expose your name for lottery officials to use. This is a practice that many people do to make sure they'll remain as the winner, regardless if their ticket gets stolen. Because she had signed the back of her ticket, she was liable to have her identity exposed. In fact, when she received the $264 million prize after all taxes, there still was no way of knowing whether or not she would be able to remain as Jane Doe. In the middle of her legal battle, she realized that her state law allowed her to create a trust and receive the money through a trustee. Ultimately, she was successful, but it hasn't always been the case for other winners. If you're lucky enough to win the lottery and are worried about losing your ticket, don't forget about your identity as well. Number 3. Mandy Van Houten versus Leslie Underwood. The bond between Mandy and Leslie were supposedly so strong, they told each other that they would split the prize money if they ever won the lottery. According to Leslie Underwood, their boss handed them some lottery tickets as a Christmas bonus. She and Mandy had promised each other that they would split the money if either of them won from their tickets. Of course, that didn't happen. As soon as her coworker Mandy won, she just disappeared. She just left and never went back to the office. Leslie saw that Mandy cashed her prize in the news and tried calling her, but of course she never returned her texts or calls. Leslie decided to file a lawsuit against her friend, but the case eventually was dropped after she got an undisclosed amount of money. Number 2. Etta Mae Urquhart versus Ronnie Lee Orender. There are plenty of stories involving family members battling over the millions of dollars a lottery ticket brings in. On this occasion, one mom had to deal with her son stealing her prize money. Etta Mae Urquhart won $51 million in the Mega Millions lottery in California. She asked her son Ronnie to double check that the numbers matched up because she couldn't believe it. Once she realized she had won, she drove to the gas station where she had bought the ticket. However, she had her son sign the lottery ticket instead because she was so excited and couldn't hold a pen. Now that was a bad move because her son had other ideas. Because he signed the ticket, he was the winner. Who would ever do this to their own mom? This guy. The case eventually went to court where a settlement was eventually reached with the details undisclosed. Number 1. Mary Holmes versus Kevin Matthews. Mary Holmes won a $188 million lottery prize and immediately found weird situations happening around her, such as having to pay $200,000 in fees to bail her boyfriend out of jail many times. That was just the tip of the iceberg. She received an official lawsuit from someone she never expected, the pastor of her local church. Pastor Kevin Matthews claimed that Mary had promised to make a big donation once she received her lottery money, but he was surprised to not get any money from her. He also said that he was under intense stress that led him to start taking anxiety medication and antidepressants. Apparently, Matthews had made verbal agreements with realtors to use the $1.5 million Holmes had allegedly promised to buy a piece of land and build a retreat for the church. Here's what happened. Holmes had in fact donated $700,000, but it wasn't enough for him. Matthews decided to sue her for $10 million anyways for what he called undue stress. Does this guy sound like a pastor anyone would want? Do you know the resolution to this case? How this lottery lawyer scammed his clients. Jason Kurland was arrested on August 18, 2020 with 3 of his partners. Why? Well, because they had been ripping off lottery winners all across the US for millions of dollars under the guise of offering legal and investment advice. Jason Kurland was famously known as the lottery lawyer. He spent years carefully branding himself as the go-to guy for lottery winners. In his own words, he was there to help, quote, to secure their wealth for generations. He had a very simple pitch. He promised to help big winners navigate the lottery system and protect them from predators coming for their cash. But instead, he was the giant predator they needed protecting from. What he did was charge winners tens of thousands of dollars in fees for very little work. Then, somewhere along the line, the mob got involved. He and the mobsters stole a lot more money from the lottery winners. In total, Kurland, along with his mob associates, are alleged to have scammed lottery winners out of $107 million. How did this self-proclaimed savior of lottery winners turn out to be such a huge scammer? Kurland graduated back in 2001 from law school at Hofstra University, meaning he's been a lawyer for almost 2 decades. He had been a partner at Rivkin Radler Law Firm, but the key word is had. His partners have severed ties with him since the fraud charges came out. Representatives for his old firm talked to the press. They, not surprisingly, said that they had no knowledge of what was going on, and the news came as a complete surprise to them. At Rivkin Radler, Kurland dealt in real estate, zoning, and land use, but those areas were more of side hustles to him by 2020. He also seemed to be a great member of the Long Island community. For example, he would volunteer and give out free legal advice at a charity called Interfaith Nutrition Network. They were a non-profit focused on providing for homeless people in Long Island. His time as a lawyer didn't go unnoticed, and by 2011, he was featured on the top 40 under 40 list by his local paper. So how did Kurland get around dealing with lottery winners? He actually randomly fell into it. His very first lottery client won a jackpot in Connecticut. That client wasn't sure where to go, and he worked for one of Kurland's clients at the time. So Kurland's client referred the winner to him, and Kurland found out how easy it was to make money off of lottery winners. So for nearly a decade, he did as much as he could to make himself the lawyer to call after someone won the lottery. He branded himself the lottery lawyer. He tweeted at any lottery winners he could find, always with the hashtag #CallMe. He began doing a lot of interviews talking about the lottery. Kurland was constantly called on by the media to offer his insight. This wasn't just about the legal side of wins. They'd ask him about some of the things he would see lottery winners do, such as the big mistakes, how different states handle the wins, and the very first thing lottery winners ought to do. He became the authority on how lottery winners should conduct themselves after suddenly becoming rich. Seeing him on TV endeared him to a lot of lottery winners around the US. It was only a matter of time before one of them sought his services, and he didn't leave that to chance. One of the biggest repeated lines about a mega jackpot win was, "Hire an attorney." And we don't disagree with him here, but you definitely have to be able to hire an attorney you can trust. For Kurland, it was the perfect hook to send any lottery winner running his way. He made it easy to find him with easy to remember, but now defunct website, thelotterylawyer.com. For players, the good news was the big win. For Jason Kurland, it meant a new potential high-paying client. A simple phone call meant that he was getting more money. If someone called, this meant that they were already sold at that point. For Kurland, it was easy. The phone call was all about repeating some of the tips he had given in interviews. Don't tell anybody, sign the back of the ticket, make a copy, and keep it somewhere safe. Once the winners agreed to work with him, Kurland charged an upfront retainer fee that ranged between $75,000 and $200,000. And on top of that, he required a monthly fee that ranged anywhere from $15,000 to $50,000. For what though? What do lottery winners need a lawyer every month for? The rates obviously weren't a problem to the mega winners. After all, they had hundreds of millions of dollars. They just thought that those fees were what were required to help secure the rest of their money. He worked with dozens of winners. The cumulative total in wins for his clients totaled in the billions. For example, just 3 of his clients who were scammed as part of his scheme collectively won $3 billion. One guy was a guy from South Carolina who won $1.5 billion in the Mega Millions lottery in 2019. While his fees were already high enough, Kurland wasn't just gonna let the billions he had access to slip past him. Initially, he would make traditional investments that got modest returns. That won him the client's trust. And that's exactly when he would start making his moves. Kurland would convince the lottery winners to invest in companies that were owned or controlled by his friends. Christopher Churchillo is a reputed soldier in the Genovese crime family. Francesco Russo and Francis Smuckler were his supposed underlings. Kurland would get a big kickback whenever clients would invest in the mob-associated businesses. Just to keep the lie going, they funneled money back to the winners and marked them as interest payment. But in reality, there was extremely little going on as far as investments were concerned. Kurland and his mob friends just mostly straight up spent the funds on their lifestyle. They went out blowing the money on luxuries such as exotic vacations, golf club memberships, private jets, and luxury cars. They even went as far as buying 2 yachts. Churchillo paid to be the chauffeur around in a Cadillac Escalade, and he also rented an $11,000 per month apartment in Manhattan. He lived this lifestyle all while claiming to run a plumbing business. That's the irony. Kurland was always vocal about how lottery winners shouldn't be buying all the nicest things. He always insisted on winners laying low for a while to maintain some normalcy. It turns out that he could not take his own advice. When they did actually try to do some business, they weren't exactly great. For example, Churchillo invested some of the funds in personal protective equipment because of the pandemic. They had actually made an $800 million deal with an unnamed state. For some reason, that state backed out of the deal. So that left Churchillo and his other partners with over $40 million worth of PPE. Russo and Smuckler, on the other hand, decided to invest some of the cash with Gregory Altieri, a jewelry merchant. They gave him $250,000 at a sky-high interest rate. According to investigators, they expected Altieri to repay a whopping $400,000. But Altieri couldn't pay up. So what did they do? Obviously, they threatened to get a hold of people close to him, his wife and son. A total of $107 million were alleged to have been mishandled by Kurland and mob associates by the time the authorities got involved. As Kurland and his mob buddies continued with their scamming, the FBI was closing in on them. And they could feel it. They were caught completely on tape discussing how to cover up their scam. And Kurland warned his partners about potentially getting busted because they were way too reckless. But that didn't seem to be much of a bother to Chirchio. He honestly didn't care. He was caught on tape rambling on about not being afraid of the FBI, according to phone recordings. To be fair, he might have been genuinely unbothered since he knew a thing or two about getting off the hook. This wasn't his first time brushing shoulders with the law. In 2004, he pleaded guilty to falsifying business records, and in 2019, he was acquitted at trial of bid rigging charges on a construction contract. Chirchio's legal battles aside, the phone recordings also exposed Russo's and Smukler's threats against Altieri. But besides the gutsy declarations of violence, Russo and Smukler were open to the idea of getting charged with fraud. Smukler in particular hoped for just a fine instead of jail time. They were also caught on tape not feeling sorry at all for stealing money from lottery winners. Chirchio said on tape, quote, "Remember, you and I didn't hit the lotto for $1.5 billion. On August 18th of 2020, their worries about getting caught by the feds came true." In total, these partners in crime faced 21 charges that could see them serve long sentences. All of them were charged with wire fraud conspiracy, money laundering, and money laundering conspiracy. Kurland, on his part, was also charged with honest services fraud for the loss of his clients' funds. Smukler and Russo picked up a few additional charges for their threats against the jewelry business owner and his family. All four of them denied the charges, and all of them, except Russo, are out on bail. Russo was a bit unlucky because of his threats to Altieri. Investigators had also found a gun under his bed that obviously could be very well interpreted as his willingness to carry out any of his threats. Of course, Russo's lawyer defended his client, saying the threats were not to be taken seriously. He said that Russo was simply trying to get back their cash in desperation. So far, 13 bank accounts connected to Kurland, Chirchio, Russo, and Smukler have been seized. The government has also placed liens on 3 properties under Smukler's and Russo's names, allegedly purchased and renovated with the stolen funds. For the winners, this is great news for the time being. At least there's a chance for them to get back some of their millions. In many of his media appearances, Kurland always had a lot to say about lottery winners getting scammed. According to him, many of the lucky players weren't sophisticated to spot the scams. But the real question is, how long was he ripping off his lottery clients? From the very beginning, or was it somewhere in between? The feds were only able to uncover roughly a year worth of fraud. He was already making a lot of money. Why did he ultimately start ripping off his clients? Was he somehow already deep in mob connections before? It's sad that Kurland ultimately was part of the scam world he preached against so much. Here's the official list of the biggest U.S. lottery winners ever. Who are the ones that went broke? Andrew Jack Whitaker. Back in 2002, Whitaker's $314.9 million win was the biggest lottery win. Even though it's not the biggest now, it's still one of the biggest wins ever. Whitaker has been covered extensively, so we'll keep this short. Whitaker won after having already been a millionaire, so you would think that he knew how to take care of money. He took his winnings as a one-time payout of roughly $113 million after taxes. Whitaker famously got robbed a couple times simply because he had large amounts of cash on him. Then there were the strange things that happened to him and his family throughout the years. Even in 2020, he could not escape the problems. His house burnt down in a strange accident. Sadly, Whitaker passed in 2020 at the age of 72. He wasn't broke, but he left a legacy of being one of the unluckiest lottery winners ever. Hey, do us a quick favor and click that like button. Holly Laddie and Jim McCullough. In 2011, Holly Laddie took home her share of a giant $380 million jackpot. Before hitting the jackpot, Holly was living in a basement in Idaho with her husband and 2 daughters. So where is Holly and what is she doing now? Basically, she got a divorce and moved to California. She seems to be living a relatively normal life without much publicity. Her troubled past with her ex-husband seems like it was something recent, but it was actually dug up in the news once she won the lottery. Currently, Holly Latta has been out of the spotlight and seems to be having a fairly normal life with her daughters in California. Is she broke? So far, it doesn't look like it. How about Jim McCullough? After winning the lottery, he said to the press that he and his wife had no intention of blowing the money. Yep, something all lottery winners say. Jim has 6 kids and a whopping 23 grandchildren. He said he wanted to use his winnings to take care of his family for generations. He's been off the radar so far, just like Holly. Anonymous couple. Back in 2016, one couple smartly refused to reveal their identity after they won the Mega Millions jackpot of $536 million. They opted to take a lump sum of roughly $271 million. What do we know about them is that they were born and raised in Indiana. They told reporters that they would continue to live and raise their children. Well, the representative they hired to talk to the press, that is. The couple bought the winning ticket at a gas station while they were on a road trip to a sports event for their kids. On a whim, they decided to buy 5 Quick Pick Mega Millions tickets. Here's the crazy part. It was the first time they bought lottery tickets ever. We're willing to bet this anonymous couple still has their money. WF Office Pool. Back in 2018, one lucky office pool of 11 people won $543 million jackpot. These Wells Fargo employees decided to do a lottery pool on a spur-of-the-moment decision. They did it just because of how big the jackpot grew. They put in $2 each into the pool, and that's easily the biggest return from $2 any of them have ever seen. So how easy is it to split a big jackpot like this among a large group? Jason Kurland of Long Island, New York, markets himself as the lottery lawyer. He says preventing conflicts in these cases is fairly straightforward. His instructions are this. Whoever buys the ticket for the group should email everyone with these details. Photocopy of the ticket specifying the drawing date and who are the members of the pool. Also, the email should include how the winnings are to be divided so there's no confusion whatsoever. Apparently, legal disputes over lottery winnings can be extra costly. Why? Because the eventual winners lose out on interest they could have earned by getting the money as soon as they can. Has anyone from this group gone broke? So far, no one just yet. Gloria and Scott McKenzie. Gloria McKenzie was 84 when she won a huge Powerball jackpot worth $590 million. So what'd she do afterwards? She sued her son. Why? Gloria opted to take home a lump sum of around $371 million after taxes back in 2013, but she had to split the earnings with her son, Scott. The reason was because he had helped her buy the winning ticket. Her son getting money isn't why she sued. It's because of how her money was managed. She gave her son Scott control of her money. He then turned to Harry Madden, a financial advisor who's also co-host of a radio show called Smart Money in Jacksonville, Florida. However, Madden didn't seem like he was great at managing money. He generated a return of less than 1% on her money in 3.5 years, and he charged her more than $2 million in fees. What do you think? Should she have sued? Obviously, Madden asked for the case to be dismissed. Since winning the lottery, though, the McKenzies have been relatively quiet, only generating attention as a result of this lawsuit. Ira Curry and Steve Tran. Back in 2013, Ira Curry and Steve Tran both won the $648 million Mega Million jackpot. For Ira Curry from Georgia, it was pretty simple. She took her winnings in cash, roughly about $120 million after taxes. Then, poof, she simply disappeared. Nothing about her in the news since her big win. When Steve Tran first won, he actually didn't know he even had a chance of having the winning ticket. That's because, as a delivery driver, he had bought tickets in so many different towns, he didn't think he had stopped in San Jose, the location where the ticket was bought. But it wasn't until he came back from a vacation that he realized that he was in San Jose. Tran had no idea he had the winning ticket for a giant lottery win sitting for weeks on his nightstand. Tran immediately called his bosses and quit his job. After his big win, just like Ira, Steve vanished from the public eye. Mega Millions Group. In March 2012, 3 different tickets from 3 different states won the $656 million Mega Millions jackpot. Merle and Patricia Butler were already retired when they won. They claimed they were going to safely invest the money and financially assist their 2 children and grandchildren. They did hire a team of financial experts to help manage their new fortune. except for the one time in 2014 that they told TMZ about scammers who were using their name on Instagram. They've stayed out of the spotlight. Another ticket was won by a group of friends who called themselves the Three Amigos. They showed up to collect the check in disguise. All three of them worked in public education in Maryland, and of course, since they showed up covered in head to toe, they haven't exactly done any follow-ups on what they've been up to. The same goes for the third winner of this giant jackpot. He or she was smart enough to stay anonymous. Lynn West and Robert Bailey. Lynn West and Robert Bailey won their share of this Powerball jackpot worth a little under $700 million. As soon as West won, she quit her job and hired a wealth manager. She went on as a guest on Ellen to talk about her win, as well as setting up a charity. The crazy thing is, she almost lost her ticket. She was moving to a new place when she bought the ticket, and she thought she had put it in her purse. Instead, ended up on the floor of her sister's car, where the ticket could have easily been lost. Other than the usual scams people pull for lottery winners, West hasn't been in the news yet and most likely isn't broke. Like West, Robert Bailey hired a financial advisor and also a lawyer to help guide him with everything. He had played the same lotto number for 25 years and finally hit it in 2018. The odds of winning the Powerball jackpot, according to the lottery, were 1 in 292,201,338. But what are the odds when a person plays the same number in a lottery thousands of times over 25 years? Aaron Tenenbein, a statistics professor at New York University's business school, estimated Mr. Bailey's odds would have been 1 out of 115,385. You may think it's because he played the same number. No, it's just the simple fact of playing for 25 years. Playing the same numbers has nothing to do with it. It's still pure chance any set of numbers hit. So far, it looks like everything is good for Bailey. No news of him going broke. Mavis Wanchik. The first thing Mavis Wanchik did after winning the Powerball lottery back in August of 2017 was quit her job. She chose to take a lump sum payment of $480 million, or $336 million after taxes. The weirdest thing that's happened to her was people going door to door asking where she lived ever since she went public with her winnings. This prompted her local police department to send some officers to her house to make sure she was safe. This is a big reason why to stay anonymous if you can. But other than the usual Instagram scams we covered earlier, Wanchik hasn't been in the news for anything else. Manuel Franco. Manuel Franco hit the huge $768.4 million Powerball jackpot just recently in March of 2019. Franco took the lump sum of roughly $326 million after taxes. He planned to live his life as normal as possible and of course promised to not go bankrupt. Here's a fun fact. Wisconsin is one of the states where lottery winners have to reveal their identity, so Manuel didn't have a choice to hide. As of 2020, it looks like things are going according to plan, as there isn't anything about Manuel in the news. Anonymous. One person, $1.537 billion. This is the largest payout to a single lottery winner in U.S. history. And this person had smartly chosen to stay anonymous. The chance to win that particular lottery was 1 in 302 million. The only thing we know is that this person was from South Carolina, and he or she hired Jason Kurland, the same lottery lawyer we mentioned earlier. What does the lottery lawyer think is the biggest challenge for lottery winners? He says it's to not let the money strain relationships. Apparently, a lot of times, friends and family feel they deserve something just because they're close to that person. The Powerball Group. The biggest lottery prize ever is $1.586 billion, which just slightly beat out the second biggest prize ever. This giant jackpot was won by 3 different tickets back in January of 2016. Let's start with Marvin and May Acosta. They actually didn't come out to claim their prize until 6 months after winning. They were taking the time to mull their options and assemble their team. Even if they wanted to stay anonymous, they couldn't. California is another state where winners have to reveal their identity. However, the Acostas have stayed out of the news since their win. Maureen Smith and David Kaltschmidt plan to live in the same home, go to the same grocery stores, and keep the same lifestyle as before they won the lottery. Well, other than going to their jobs. And they were going to buy a few nice things, such as a new Tesla and a new truck. John and Lisa Robinson won their share of this giant jackpot, and the Robinsons bought a $6.2 million home 2 years after the win. The house came with a private lake, 10 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, and a home theater. Lisa tried to go back to work, but couldn't do it after everyone treated her differently. Here are the reasons why winning the lottery is a legit nightmare. Find out the ridiculous reason why one lottery winner decided to sue her own son when he didn't do anything wrong. Number 6, robbed. Winning the lottery is a dream come true for most people, but the truth is, ultimately, it's not. Lottery winners end up being targeted for their money all the time. And this is why we always say, stay anonymous if you ever get rich. That wasn't what Lee Davies and Carrie Ann Copestick did. They got robbed just 11 days after they announced a 6-figure lottery win. Photographers had taken pictures of them celebrating, and it was in the local newspaper. What do you think? Should lottery winners' names be kept secret? Let us know in the comments. And do us a quick favor, hit that like button below because it really helps us out. Anyways, getting in the newspaper for winning the lottery was a bad move for them, because armed robbers wearing ski masks broke into their house while they slept and demanded money and gold. The robbers were able to steal jewelry, phones, and other items that were worth over $14,000. Unfortunately for Lee and Carrie Ann, they had just finished shopping for some high-ticket items. However, probably the most famous lottery winner who's been robbed is Andrew Jackson Whitaker. He was the winner of a 2002 lottery of $314.9 million. It was the largest jackpot ever won by a single winning ticket in U.S. lottery history at the time. That win made him super famous. The interesting thing is, he was already a multimillionaire. The win made him really, really rich, and it made him a robbery target. The first time he was robbed was in 2003 when he left $545,000 in a suitcase in his car. He was in a gentleman's club at the time, and he was relieved of his cash. This money was unfortunately long gone and never recovered. In January of 2004, someone broke into his car again and made off with roughly $200,000 in cash. He somehow recovered the cash, though. You would have thought he would learn not to leave large amounts of cash in his car anymore. Number 5, gone. Gregory Birch Jr. won almost $500,000 from the Georgia lottery in November of 2016. But just 2 short months later, burglars broke into his home and took his life. 3 masked robbers shot open his door and held Birch at gunpoint. They demanded money and his wallet. So Birch took off and threw his pants toward the robbers, who rummaged through his pants to get his wallet. When his wallet didn't come up with any cash, the 3 robbers still took shots at him anyways. Lottery winner Uruj Khan of Chicago had a different experience, but the same results. He was targeted just shortly after he won $1 million from a scratch-off ticket. He ended up accepting an oversized promotional check from Illinois lottery representatives with his wife and teenage daughter at his side. But weeks later, before he had collected the actual winnings, Khan passed unexpectedly. What happened? Medical examiners found that Khan had been poisoned with a lethal dosage of cyanide. To this day, there's still very little evidence in the investigation. No one was ever charged with one of Chicago's strangest cases in years, and the case is still unsolved. However, the most common thing to happen to lottery winners is definitely number 4, going broke. Is going broke a curse, or is it just evidence that lottery winners just don't know how to control themselves? We can give example after example of winners going broke. Lottery winners such as Michael Carroll, Sharon Turabassi, and Callie Rogers. Is it better to have gotten the money and spent it all? Or is it better to have never gotten the money and not live with the pain of regret? The one thing that seems to be certain is that lottery winners just can't help but spend their winnings. Supposedly, roughly 70% of lottery winners go broke. We don't think that number is accurate. However, what we would put money on is that lottery winners go broke at a higher percentage than the general population. It just seems like the majority of lottery winners lose their minds after a big win. They completely change their previous lifestyle and spend the money or give away money until they're broke. For example, lottery winner Janet Lee kept on giving away her winnings, all the way until she went bankrupt. You can find out more about that story in our video, The Strangest Ways Lottery Winners Blew Their Money. We're not saying lottery winners shouldn't change their lifestyle, because that's the whole point of having money. It's to be able to do what we want. Even if lottery winners didn't change any of their spending habits, their life still changed anyways. How? They never have to work for money again. Almost all lottery winners have a plan to keep the money, but for some reason they just can't execute on their plan. So what's the best thing to do after a lottery win? Our opinion is to just not spend any money from the lottery for a few months. Just get used to the feeling of having an amount of money we're not used to. What do you think? What's the best way for lottery winners to keep the money? Aside from losing money, winning the lottery is a nightmare because of... Number 3, strange mishaps. Doesn't it seem like a lot of strange things happen to lottery winners as well? For example, Deborah McDonald had the unfortunate luck of getting hit by a car on the day she got her check from her lottery. She had just gone out to dinner with her husband and her friends to celebrate. However, as she was walking home, she was hit by a car. She sadly succumbed to her injuries. Jeff Holmberg is another example. He won almost $30 million in the Powerball in 2001. He had just separated from his wife Victoria Zell when he won. Technically, they were still married, but he decided to split the prize with her anyway since he still cared about her. Unfortunately, she was the cursed winner. Just 4 short years later, she was sentenced to prison for her role in a car accident that left one person paralyzed and another dead. Also, remember Andrew Whitaker from earlier? His life of misfortune ever since he won the lottery has been well documented. For example, after the 2 robberies, there was the passing of his granddaughter, Brandy Bragg's boyfriend. Then just a few months later, Brandy herself passes away. And there were even more people who had plotted to try to rob him. But the latest news of his bad luck was in 2016. His Virginia home caught on fire and was destroyed. His wife was at home at the time, but she fortunately got out safely. Volunteer firefighters from 5 separate departments battled the fire after it started in the kitchen. Here's the crazy thing. The house was not insured. It was eventually declared a total loss. Not insuring the house was Whitaker's fault, but the fire seemed to be just plain bad luck. With all this bad luck, there's no wonder so many winners have... Number 2, emotional issues. When Callie Rogers won the lottery as a 16-year-old, she thought life was going to be amazing. It became anything but. She remembers how plenty of new people came into her life and tried to use her. She gave out loans to people that were never repaid. People partied with her and expected her to pay for everything. Eventually, she was left with just a few $1,000s. Once that happened, she tried to end everything. Fortunately, her family were able to find her and get her to the hospital. Now with the cash all gone, Callie admitted in interviews that she's never felt better. Her life is back to normal now, and that's exactly the way she wants it. Callie felt that she was too young to handle the pressures of winning so much money at such a young age. Jane Park, another super young lottery winner, seems to be another winner who has emotional issues. Although she hasn't gone broke, her behavior has been strangely erratic over the years. Just recently, she posted on her Instagram that she's, quote, struggling but surviving. Her strangest behavior has to be opening an OnlyFans account despite not needing money. Or maybe it was the time she offered to be a sugar mama to a guy that she's willing to date. She offered a, quote, 6-figure annual allowance to a Mr. Right who wants to wine and dine her. But sometimes it's a good thing. Donna Micken felt emotional bankruptcy for years after her lottery win. In 2007, she and her husband Ed won the New York State Lottery for $34.5 million. But winning just wasn't what she wanted. She wrote on a blog post that after she won the lottery, she had an overwhelming feeling of guilt. How was she any more worthy than her neighbor? Why did she win and not someone more deserving? If anything, the lottery forced her to reflect on her life, but it sounds like she worked out her issues in the end. Even if lottery winners are able to come to peace with their win, a lot of them still have to deal with... Number 1, court issues. Mary Holmes won the lottery for $188 million. And she was nice enough to give the pastor of her church $700,000. Seems more than generous, right? Not to him. He turned right around and sues her. Apparently, her pastor, Kevin Matthews, had given spiritual help and counseling to Holmes after the win, and she had told Holmes that she would give the church a generous donation to help buy land for the church. He said that he requested at least $1 million, and she said yes. Because she only gave $700,000, he sued Holmes for the money she supposedly had verbally promised. And it isn't always someone suing the winner. Gloria McKenzie became the biggest single Powerball winner in U.S. history when she won $590.5 million in 2013. Gloria claimed that low return investments made by her son Scott McKenzie and his financial advisors cost her tens of millions of dollars. She said that her money should have been better managed, so she decided to sue her son Scott for mismanaging her fortune. Did her son actually lose money for her? Or did she really sue him just because of lost opportunity cost? Here are some of the most interesting ways lottery winners have spent their winnings. And wait until you hear the single best piece of advice lottery winners almost never follow. Number 6. Janet Lee. Lottery winner Janet Lee was one lottery winner with a big heart. She won $18 million in the lottery in 1993. This win was life-changing money for her, and with it, she wanted to fulfill some dreams that she had. However, most of her dreams didn't involve buying things for herself like a lot of lottery winners. Instead, she wanted to give away her winnings. Court filings and federal records showed that Lee was generous to a variety of causes, particularly politics, education, and her community. Lee began becoming well known to Democratic political leaders in 1997. She gave campaign checks of $100,000 to the Democratic National Committee. Her support of the Democrats allowed her to sit next to Bill Clinton at one of the fundraisers. Her generosity soon got prominent Missouri Democrats seeking campaign donations from her. She donated $277,000 to various candidates. Democratic activists were introduced to Lee through Clinton's campaign aides. It wasn't just politics, though. It was in education as well. She supposedly donated $1.5 million to Washington University in Missouri. To this day, across from the entrance to Washington University School of Law Library, there still hangs a painting of Janet Lee. And that's not all. They also built and named a reading room in the library after her. The library is considered one of the nicest college libraries in the nation. The Janet Lee Reading Room still looks as fancy as it did when it was first built. And Janet just kept giving and giving. She gave away a lot of money to her church. She donated money to the local homeless shelters in St. Louis. It seemed like she gave until she couldn't anymore. Because after just 8 years after winning $18 million, she filed for bankruptcy in 2001. We're not sure if she had any regrets giving away a ton of her money. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. And also, do us a quick favor, hit that like button. Number 5. Jonathan Vargas. Lotto winner Jonathan Vargas won a little over $35 million from the Powerball when he was only 19 years old. When he was picking numbers for the ticket, he didn't just choose any random numbers. Instead, he relied on intuition. Vargas said that most of the numbers he picked represented the ages of his family members at the time. However, he definitely needed better intuition when it came to coming up with a business to grow his winnings. He thought that going into business for himself was the best way to maintain his wealth. And he knew that he wanted to do something in the entertainment industry. But his decision of starting an all-girls wrestling league called Wrestlelicious? We're gonna have to say there are better businesses out there to invest in. He created a television show called Wrestlelicious Takedown. That was sort of a sketch comedy featuring professional female wrestlers in bikinis. After just 1 year of primetime broadcasts, Wrestlelicious was canceled in 2010. Vargas was out nearly $500,000 of his lottery winnings for this venture. Vargas said that if he had to do it all over again, he would have waited a year to decide what he really wanted to do. Interestingly enough, the Wrestlelicious website is still up to this day, and they're hinting at a comeback? Number 4. John and Linda Cutie. When John and Linda Cutie first won their share of the huge Mega Millions jackpot back in 2011, they only had one thing on their mind, and that was build a water park? John and his wife Linda decided to invest some of their $28.7 million to build a water park in honor of their parents. Technically, it was John that won, but of course, Linda really won too. John was one of 7 employees at the New York State Homes and Community Renewal in Albany who cashed in on the winning $319 million Mega Millions ticket. So, how much does building a water park cost? Apparently, it was only around $200,000, or at least what the Cuties donated to the village of Green Island in New York. They went to the town officials after winning the drawing to ask what they could do to help out their hometown, and the officials requested the installation of the spray pool. It seems like the kids loved it. This is the one lottery splurge that probably had the most people that got to enjoy it. Number 3. Ebi Roncioli. Ebi Roncioli won $5 million in the lottery back in 1991. She was a Hungarian-born beauty shop owner who was married to a doctor. Her husband being a doctor is actually relevant, and we'll get to that in just a minute. When she won the lottery, she first gave away roughly $800,000 to the one son she had with her husband, Dr. Roncioli. She also gave away roughly the same amount to another son she had from a previous marriage. This son also lived with them as part of the family. Okay, this seems pretty normal so far, right? Lottery winners give away winnings to family members all the time. However, here's the twist in the story. She secretly gave away a further $2 million to a son she had with a third man. His existence was a secret from the entire family. Well, Dr. Roncioli didn't like this whatsoever, so he decided to poison her. The secret gift of $2 million to a son he didn't know about probably put him over the edge because their life was far from perfect at the time. She had racked up $1 million in debt. On top of that, after 35 years of marriage, even though they lived in the same mansion, they hardly saw each other, according to their son. Dr. Roncioli's defense was that he was trying to get a sample from her to check on her since her health had been declining at a rapid pace, and he accidentally gave her too much sedative. Nope, the jury didn't buy it. Dr. Roncioli was charged with his wife's murder and later convicted of manslaughter in 2008. Number 2. Alex and Rhoda Toth. Alex and Rhoda Toth were 2 lottery winners who became infamous pretty much as soon as they won a $13 million lottery jackpot. When they won the lottery back in 1990, their family was living in poverty at the time. Alex had to take care of his wife as well as 6 kids, some of whom were his kids from previous relationships. They were living paycheck to paycheck, and supposedly they had less than $25 that they had to live on for 7 days at the time they won the lottery. In initial interviews, Alex and Rhoda said that the money wasn't going to change them. However, as soon as they won, they went to Las Vegas for 3 months, and they were living it up in the penthouse suites at a cost of $1,000 per night. Do we need to say that they also gambled away a ton of money? They finally got tired of Vegas and then moved to Florida. To make a long story short, you guessed it, they eventually filed for bankruptcy not once, but twice. They also faced charges of tax fraud. At the time of their criminal investigation, according to investigators, there was nothing left. Alex and Rhoda were once again living in abysmal conditions. They had no electricity at their home. The only source of power was a wire that was hooked to the home to the couple's car engine. Rhoda eventually served time in prison for 2 years. Alex didn't serve any time because he ended up passing because of a heart attack. And now we get to the what not to do section of this video. What are you not supposed to do if you win the lottery? The best advice we've heard is to not buy anything immediately. Wait something like 6 months, or maybe wait a year. Basically, don't use the money at all until you get used to it. This is the same advice Jonathan Vargas wished he could have given to himself before he lost $500,000 with his Resolucious idea. The emotions of winning a big amount of money we're not used to seriously clouds our judgment. We also need to have the time to learn to adjust to friends and family treating us differently. Callie Rogers was the youngest lottery winner ever back in 2003 at the age of 16. She said that she was too young at the time to handle the money. She caved into the pressure of her fake friends who asked her for money, even though they didn't really care about her. She revealed in interviews how after her win, she gave away hundreds of thousands of dollars and had to deal with jealousy from total strangers. To this day, Roger said she still owed hundreds of thousands of dollars. Her fake friends took her debit card to buy MacBooks and gifts for themselves while she partied at the height of her fame. The whole point of having money is to spend it. We can't take it with us. But when we use it, we want to make sure we're actually using it to get the max value we can get out of it. In our opinion, the best thing money can do for us is to make sure we never have to work out of necessity for money again. Number 1. Brian Caswell. And if we're going to end on a good note with our last entry, when Brian Caswell and his wife Joan won the £25 million in the Euro Millions, they were in shock. However, that shock may have contributed to the fact that he had to get an emergency quadruple bypass. And instead of waiting, his daughter researched the top surgeon and he paid to get private health care. Well, Brian was almost 80 at the time, so that was a decision that made total sense. The lottery has kept him healthy as well as happy. He and his wife's lottery win seems like it's going to be one of those stories with a happy ending. They haven't blown their winnings, and it seems like their biggest splurges have been a new house, a new heart for Brian, and a plot of land at his granddaughter's school? Yep, Brian decided to donate some of his winnings to Egerton Primary School in Manchester, England, where 4 of his grandkids go to school. Brian is a big gardener, and he wanted to be able to teach kids what he learned at school. Winning the lottery gave Brian the time, and the money of course, that he needed to grow the very best fruit and vegetables. And eating homegrown fresh produce is something he's passionate about and tried to instill in his children and grandchildren. Find out the hidden truth that so-called cursed lottery winners didn't know. The immense appeal winning the lottery has is undeniable. Millions of people across the world have spent countless millions trying to win the so-called golden ticket. It has to happen to someone. If you won, you get all the attention, all of the recognition, and of course, all of the money. But do you really? One of the things many lottery winners forget is that once you win the lottery, you gotta pay big-time taxes. Some countries don't have this rule, but if you do have to pay, it's a big chunk of change. Big jackpots generally have an annuity option, and they usually go for as long as 30 years. This is the option we recommend to anyone that's never had money before to take. Why? The reasons are all psychological. Yes, if you have the discipline to not blow the money and you know finance, then by all means, take the lump sum. You know what taking the annuity guarantees? Guarantees the lottery winners they'll at least be rich for however long the annuity takes. Would we be making this video if lottery winners decided to take the safer option with the annuity? You know the answer. As life-changing as winning the lottery is, one thing is true. The more money you make, the more problems you have. Biggie dropped the truth on that one way back in the day. But the truth is this, it doesn't have to be that way. More problems come into lottery winners' lives because they're the ones that create the problems if we're honest about it. If you won the lottery, your money troubles should be solved. The theory is that you don't have to worry about money problems ever again. But we know that that doesn't happen. One research study claims that roughly 70% of all lottery winners end up going broke after a few years, while another study says it's around a third of lottery winners. The truth is that it's somewhere in between. Whatever the actual number is, what's true is that lottery winners go broke way more than the average person. What happens when someone wins the lottery? They start doing crazy spending. Huge mansions, ultra-expensive cars, never-ending vacations, the list goes on and on. This is why Biggie was right. People create more problems for themselves by buying things they don't really need. Rich people become rich because they only buy things that they need and focus on generating more money. Most of the time, making more money isn't the goal of people who are already rich, but rather it's a side effect of them doing what they love. One study showed that the relationship between bankruptcy and receiving a windfall without any effort leads to a loss of at least half of the money. Receiving unearned money only delays an expected bankruptcy status for a person who is already struggling financially. The main reason why is because of the lack of knowledge on how to efficiently use their newfound money. That's why it's just a matter of time. Here's one thing lottery winners really should not do. Quit their job. Okay, maybe not. But The thing is this, lottery winners should try to have as little disruption from their normal life as possible. This way, they can get used to the money. Impulsive behavior is the reason for all the bankruptcy we've seen with lottery winners. No amount of money can ever not be immune from bankruptcy. Just look at the billionaires who've gone broke before. Understanding that money only solves money problems is something lottery winners need to understand. So, what should you do? Well, basically, the whole point of life is do whatever you want to do. But that always comes within reason. Not having to work for money means that money is working for you instead. The best thing most winners can do is hire a fiduciary financial advisor. This is a person who will come up with a thoughtful plan of how to invest their money so it can actually grow. And typically, they'll come up with a number that shows how much lottery winners can spend each month. Really, it's that simple, guys. Making a budget and sticking to it. Historically, most people who've won the jackpot have a history of poor financial decisions. With this in mind, it's understandable the way they handled their money that led them to bankruptcy. Making random investments just because you got the money for it is not the way to go. Too many winners have gone down this spiral, only to find that whatever investment from some random guy was completely a bad idea. Knowing how to handle that amount of money isn't easy. It requires the right mindset all the time, something most winners don't even think about. Many winners end up dealing with depression. It's probably because they found out that most people around them ended up revealing who they actually were. Their entire life changes, but that's only if you let it. But what you can't change is the way people act around you. You may think it's impossible that your family's attitude towards you will change, but ask anyone who's come into money, or anyone that's become famous. The lure of fame and money is so powerful that many families face huge tension once one of their members wins the lottery. People start asking for money and demanding you pay them back for everything they've done for you. It seems like stuff for some made-for-TV movie, but it's real. For example, Kanye's own cousin stole his MacBook and threatened to release its contents unless Kanye paid him $250,000. And Kanye paid it. This is a sad reality most lottery winners don't know how to face, so they just cave in and say yes to their relatives' requests. There are ways to avoid falling to the pressure of the emotional manipulation and constant guilt trips from family members. One tip that may save a lot of lottery winners from ruining their relationship with their family: blame it on the financial advisor. Whenever they're prompted with a request or a new business idea, just say the advisor has to sign off on it. It frees them from blame. What generally happens to lottery winners is that once they're financially rich, they feel they can spend as much as they want, whenever they want, however they want. The problem with that is this: they're financially rich, but they're mentally broke. Their mentality is the truth why they can't help but go broke. Their state of mind creates a never-ending spiral that just sucks the money out of them. Being rich really is a state of mind. Millionaires and even billionaires who made their own money understand this better than anyone else. Instead of concentrating on all the things they can buy, they focus on doing what it was that led them to getting rich in the first place. Many millionaires and billionaires understand that money is just a tool to use. They just buy things that allow them to live life the way they want to. Money never became their identity. They don't buy expensive things because it's expensive and they want to show off. They buy expensive things because it's what they actually want, and they don't care if no one else in the world knew it. Winning the lottery seems to be the ultimate dream for a lot of people, but does it actually make people happier? There's been plenty of research studying the psychological effects winning the lottery has on people. Studies have shown that there's no clear indication that winning a lottery makes anyone happy. It may seem like a no-brainer that no more money problems means a lifetime of happiness and joy, but that's not the truth. One really old study from 1978 compared lottery winners with regular people and found that winning the lottery did not really improve long-term happiness. The study demonstrated that people, regardless of a life-changing situation on the outside, have a determined state of happiness which they return to after a while. Lottery winners tend to increase their happiness right after winning, but they generally go back to their previous happiness level. This is what experts call hedonic adaptation. Your happiness set point, which is determined of course by the winner prior to winning, won't change by winning the lottery. Any deep-rooted issues is something money won't solve. It's only a temporary band-aid that helps to cover up the problem. To sum it up, all the money in the world cannot solve any non-money problems and make someone happier. Money is just money, and how someone looks at it is that person's viewpoint. Money isn't evil, nor is it good, but it's rather how someone perceives the money is what's the crucial difference. How many times have you heard a self-made millionaire say their life got worse because of the hard-earned money they now have? The thing is that with lottery winners, they view the money differently than someone that worked hard for the money. Without the knowledge of how to accumulate millions of dollars the conventional way, it seems that lottery winners simply just don't know how to handle money in general. The experts say lottery winners need to become a person who's prepared to handle a huge sum of money. That's obviously easier said than done. Becoming a person who's stable enough mentally to handle the power money brings is the real goal. The hidden truth that lottery winners don't know is that rich people become rich because they didn't do it strictly for the money. They were just creating services and products that benefited the world. The money was just something that came along. The world can't help but give those people money because of the massive value they created. Money is the side effect of what they did. And without this mentality of constantly creating more value than receiving value, it's only a matter of time before lottery winners go broke. Lottery winners really should tell no one that they won the lottery. The whole press conference for lottery winners only benefits the people that put on the lottery. There's no upside for the winner at all. Winning the lottery guarantees people that people will start randomly appearing in their life now. Obviously, it's because they know they're rich. Letting the rest of the world know that they won the lottery is absolutely the wrong move. Too many winners have been scammed because one too many people found out they had money. Some people even have been murdered. This guy who showed up in the Scream mask had the exact right idea. Fewer the people who know, the better. We've said it before and we'll say it again. Lottery winners should immediately get someone who's a fiduciary that they can blame. Blame for what? Having to say no all the time. He'll be prepared to say no because he's legally bound to do what's in your best interest. Watch this video to find out people who weren't the smartest with their winnings.